Okay, we've brought you lots of things about business. This week we've got Ajmal Mushtaq from Boss Pizza. We'll be touching on bank savings, education, taxation and politics this week. So this is a must listen to. Lots of different conversations. Please give us a like and a follow and subscribe to any of the platforms that you're on.
Right, Ajmal, so let's go a wee bit right to your beginning, your upbringing.
Yep.
Talk to us between your upbringing up to the point of your corporate job. Who is Ajmal?
In 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, or as long as you want. Let's go.
Right, the son of immigrants, born in Glasgow, moved to Hamilton when I was about 5 years old. Went to school in Hamilton, just normal state school. And then I worked as a waiter after I left school for 5 years in my dad's business. I was lost. I had no direction in life. I didn't know what I wanted. There's too much pressure on young people.
Absolutely.
Age 16, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? A 16-year-old hasn't got a clue. So I just drifted. And then when I was 21, I found my spark. And I thought, you know what, I want to work in the corporate world in London, in the Premier League of companies. And at that time, it was Accenture. They were the number one graduate employer 5 years straight. So I thought, yeah, I want to work there. Went to Glasgow Uni, got my law degree, got 2 master's degrees, and then I ended up getting my dream job. Worked there for 10 years, just under 10 years. And then after that, I thought, you know, I've got a burning desire to run my own business. Started my own business, hugely successful, sold it. And now I started Boss Pizza. So I've been working full-time in Boss Pizza for 18 months. And that is my life in 30 seconds.
Wow.
Well, let's home in a wee bit about that then, because I'm quite interested because a lot of people would stop at the highly paid corporate role because that's me, I've made it now, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you've exceeded that to go and work for yourself. So there was that burning desire, as you said, but where did that come from? Where did you say, I want to exit this? Because most people would say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You've got a good job.
Good job. Sorry, scratch that. Great job, great lifestyle, jet set lifestyle, money never an issue, good promotion points. You're dealing with great colleagues. You're working in the best offices in London. It was just like the dream job, but there was something missing inside. I would go to work, come home and sit on the sofa and watch TV. And I thought, you know what, I've got so much more to give.
Offer.
Yeah, so much more to offer. And after 3, 4, 5 years, I'm thinking, is this it? Is this my life? I'm just sat here watching television from 7 o'clock to like 10 o'clock and then you go to bed. And I thought there's got to be more to life than that. And I had this burning desire to run my own business. And then I decided I'm going to leave. And that decision to leave my corporate job and start my own business, that decision was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. It took me 2 years to make that decision.
Really?
One day it's a yes, the next day it's a no, the next day it's a yes, the next day it's a no. That carried on for 2 years and I thought, I just got so fed up with myself. I thought, fuck it, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you fail spectacularly. At least you can go back to a job.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can always return to where you came from.
Exactly.
Yeah. What were the things that you were wrestling with though that took you 2 years? What was the yes and the no part? You know, what was holding you back to make it no and then finally make it yeah?
Yeah, the fact that I've got a dream job. This was like a top tier job with a top tier company, very well paid. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
You know, that is what you dream of when you're young. And when I was remembering back to the days when I was a waiter, that was the pinnacle, the dream. And then to sacrifice all of that for uncertainty, that was, is this going to work? Is it not going to work?
Right.
And then I just made the decision and it worked and I'm here. So
Perfect.
yeah.
How did your family take that?
Well, my parents are like, are you sure? And when my parents say that, that means that's a fucking stupid idea. That's dumb.
They're trying to be subtle.
But that's very tactful and diplomatic. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
Because see, for my parents, my mum wasn't educated and my dad was educated to like an okay level. They knew back in the 80s, if you get very well educated, you give yourself an advantage in life.
Yeah.
So my parents instilled that and they saw all of their children educate themselves and achieve great things. And then they're thinking, well, we pushed you all this way, now you're going to give it all up. So they were a little bit cautious, but it's worked out. So I'm quite happy.
Yeah, no, listen, I totally agree with you, because I'll be honest with you, that's one of my regrets. I don't have a strong education,
Right.
and I wish I did.
Right.
And I wish I did stick in at school, because it gives you options.
Yeah.
You know, as much as you can, people can say you can do what you want.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Because there is things you do need a strong education for to be able to do that. And there's also a trap on social media where there's a lot of people displaying that, you know, you don't need an education.
Yeah.
It's fine, just like forget school, right? Because I can do it without that. You can do it without that.
Follow your dream
Yeah.
straight
Follow your
away.
dream,
Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. You need to have an education because that gives you the edge and it gives you that confidence.
Yeah.
And in a lot of my videos, I speak about marketing, and I say, like, one of the fundamental rules of marketing is a unique selling point. And I say unique selling point is bullshit. And I say in my videos, put me in a room of marketing experts and I can challenge them all day long that unique selling point is bullshit. Now, had I not had an education, even though I wasn't educated in marketing, had I not had an education, I don't think I would have the confidence to say that.
To have stood by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we speak at this, we were talking about this the other day, actually. The only downside, I think, and it's only my opinion, to formal education is, I mean, my brother's very intelligent, university lecturer, right? But I think he's capped up where he is because he's been trained and educated that, you know, you need to be intelligent, you need to be smart. Don't ask for help. You're a grade A student. You don't ask for help. It's almost seen as an embarrassment to ask for help in that kind of structure. Whereas the job of an entrepreneur is building a team and asking for help. You can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
So
And being a bit more creative probably than, you know, than your standard, what your standard education gives you.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
So I've got some young people working for me, and I have to sort of sit them down and I say, this is not university, this is not school, right? We're not here to reinvent the wheel. The work that you're doing has already been done 1,000 times over. You just need to copy it and add your own twist onto it and make it a bit better.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do that in university or school, you get slammed for cheating.
Yes.
Whereas in the real world, it's a totally different scenario.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the ways kids can get better and develop more is by trying different jobs.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they're not allowed to start work until they're 16 now is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I think being out in the world would actually open their eyes to say, where am I going?
Yeah.
What is it that I want? And it would either make them drill down and do more education, or it'll make them get that spark earlier and be more creative and do something on their own, you know?
Exactly.
I always say the fact that I started working when I was younger and I've been in lots of different jobs, that all helps you with confidence building, learning how to be amongst different peer groups.
Exactly.
And I think that's what's lacking in children now. You know.
Great. And I absolutely agree with you. One of the biggest life skills I ever learnt was waiting tables.
Yeah, absolutely.
The ability to spark up a conversation with anyone at any time
Yep.
is such a valuable skill in the real business world.
Yep.
And I learnt that when I was waiting tables. So if anyone's working in a job that they might think is a dead-end job, there's always something you can take from it.
Absolutely. I think the skills that you can hone in from all those experiences drive you forward in life. I think it dampens down that fear that you have of trying something new.
Yeah.
Because you're going into it with a little bit more confidence, with a little bit more experience behind you, and going, well, this is like a piece of cake. I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to sitting, petrified about being in a different environment.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's very interesting what you say there. At a young age, 16, it's hammered into you at school. Like, what do you want to do? You need to know now or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, see, with the greatest respect, I mean, you would have never have thought, I don't know, at a point in time you were going to be sitting here, and scaling a business like Boss Pizza. I never thought I was going to be sitting here with you. I never thought I'd be involved in property. I don't. And the truth be told, 10 years from now, I'll be doing something completely different because you're always growing and evolving.
Yeah.
Whereas you're kind of almost told to, like, pick your job and that's you.
Yeah, exactly.
For the rest of your life.
But that's again how you're having those different experiences in work at a young age. It gets your juices flowing a little bit more, and you will be able to go, right, this isn't for me. I've tried that. that's okay. I've got some skills from it, which I can then, take to my next position. And then you'll try that for a little bit of time, and then you go, right, this isn't for me either. But you'll have honed in some skills there, and forward you march. Yeah,
exactly.
It's also teaching you as well that failure is absolutely okay.
Yeah.
It's absolutely okay to fail 100 times to find the thing that you actually want to do.
Of course it is, yeah.
Where did the restaurant part come from? So you're in the corporate job, you had the burning desire.
Yep.
Why a restaurant?
So when my dad had a restaurant. My dad was in the restaurant business. And then I worked in the restaurant business when I was from the age of 14 onwards, part-time. And then when I left school, worked in it full-time. And then, so I was just brought up in that environment. And then when I worked in London, my dad would be on the phone to me every day. He had a tiny 30-seater restaurant in Hamilton. It was really, really small. It was about maybe 3 times the size of this room.
Okay.
And he was saying, I'm struggling. I need to retire. I can't do this business anymore. It's physically very demanding. And I thought, well, that could be good because I'm in the restaurant business already. I've got experience. Waiting tables. I love food. So it was just a natural step for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, natural progression.
Yeah. And then I took that business. It was a tiny 30-seater restaurant, and I grew it to being the biggest takeaway operation in Britain within 4 years.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
What did you do to grow it, to get it such a big operation?
So you need to go to Mushtaq's kitchen, Google the images. This is like an aircraft hangar of a kitchen.
Yeah.
It was on. Have you? Yeah.
I've seen it.
So what did I do to grow the business? Easy. Focused very much on the product. Great product, great service, great price point. Wrap it up in good marketing and deliver it consistently. That is the formula for any business, and that's all I did. And see, when I'm on podcasts and I'm talking to people and they ask, what's a magic formula? That is the formula.
Right.
Very easy to say, but very difficult to execute. Day in, day out.
Yeah.
And keeping those standards high and the quality high.
Yeah. Going back just a wee second to unpacking from leaving your corporate role. Mm-hmm. Because when you leave a job, which you said was a great job, very well paid, and then you go and start a business, everybody thinks on day one that's you made it now because you've got a registered company in Companies House and you made a penny yet, right? Yeah. So how did you handle you presumably must have had a dip in your salary?
Major. Not only my salary, but my wife's salary as well. And this is a great thing. One of my big successes is the fact that I had a wonderful wife. Sorry, I have a wonderful wife that just supports my decisions, and that's just fantastic. She had a really well-paid job, and I said, we're going to leave. We're going to move back to Hamilton, start a business, and she said, okay, and she supported me all the way.
Do you think you could have done it without her? Do you think having the right partner is
crucial?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's it really does help. You know, if you've got someone that's just fighting your corner for you. Yeah. Although she only worked in the business for the first year, and then we had children. Just the fact that she was always there when I arrived home stressed. It was someone where I could let off some steam. She was always very understanding, always very supportive. So yeah, I think having the correct partner is absolutely fundamental. You know, it's a major advantage.
Yeah, it definitely has an effect in your business. I don't care what anybody says, because if you're with the wrong partner, you go into the business with the wrong attitude and the wrong setup for the day. So it's absolutely crucial, in my opinion. Yeah.
And my wife, this is quite interesting because there's a lot of talk about this. There was a lot of talk about women should be working, women's empowerment and all that. And then you see all these TikTok. I love these TikToks. There's these women, this girl sitting in a car at 2 a.m. starting the night shift. And she said, who came up with this idea that women should work? Women's empowerment. Who thought of that? You know, she's going in for her night shift. So there's been a lot of chat about women's empowerment, but now I think my wife hasn't worked since she left her corporate job, and I don't want her to work. She looks after the kids, she looks after the house. When I arrive home, she's happy, the kids are happy, they're fed, you know, dinner's cooked. You know, it's just such a wonderful environment to come to. Yeah. And I think that's much better for me to perform in business rather than having her there and she's dealing with the stress. I need that peace when I go home.
Yeah. Sounds like she's looking after you as well.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, I don't have to worry about anything in the house. I don't cook. I don't clean. She takes care of everything. Yeah. You know, she looks after the kids really, really well. And then the other thing is, and I don't understand this, and it's very sad, I would see when I went to drop my kids off at nursery, parents would drop their kids off at 8 o'clock in the morning, like 6-month-old babies, and pick them up at 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I would much rather work extra hard.
Yeah.
If me and my wife are struggling to pay the bills, and my wife has to work, I would rather work extra hard, double the time, but I would ensure that my wife is home looking after the kids.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost some of that.
That raises quite a big discussion as well, because I think you're absolutely right. I think it's important that children have got that stability from a young age and know that that environment is a nice, safe, happy environment, that their mum's always there for them, kind of thing. But I also think that the way life is just now and the demands and the cost of living, it's making both parents having to work and make that sacrifice so that they can provide for the children. Yeah. But then that also gives them a different opinion of, well, why don't you just accept less? Yeah. You know, have a little bit less for a little bit of time so that it is just the man that's going out to work. Yeah. And then you've got the other thing of, but women want a piece of the cake as well. Yeah. Yeah. Why are they the ones that
that's what social media is telling you, that's why.
Why are they just got to stay at home and do all the cooking and the cleaning and get, you know, sometimes little or no thanks for it? Yeah. I'm not saying that's your case, because that is obviously not coming across. It's like you're very grateful that side of things is taken care of and you're very appreciative, but a lot of women don't have that.
And my wife appreciates the fact that I go out and work hard, and if I need to, I can work 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15, 16, whatever number of hours I need to get the result over the line.
Yeah. So. And then there's some women that don't like that, because then they feel that they're being neglected, they're never seeing their husband, and then that takes them down other paths of filling their time differently.
In fact, that's a good point. For the first 6 years of my business, from 2009 to 2015, I never had dinner with my wife. I was always working. I was working 14, 15, 16 hours a day, every day for 6 years. Hardly saw my son. He was a newborn at the time. For the first 6 years of his life, hardly saw him. Hardly saw my wife for the first 6 years, and my wife never complained once.
Yeah, because I think, again, if you're working as a team, and you know it's for a greater good, and this is like a short-term pain for a better family gain, then you're all working on the same page and everything's cool, and you're reconnecting and you're communicating that as those 6 years are going along. You know, it's fine, everything's going to be okay. Then that's good. But if you're not doing that, that's where the fractures come into play, and then it can go off course quite quickly.
I got slated. You'll never get that time back that you missed with your son. Yeah, but ever since that point, I've never once had to worry about any decision, about anything. My son's a Manchester City fan, and it was Real Madrid versus Manchester City in the Bernabeu, which is the most amazing stadium in the world. This stadium is mind-blowing. He says, Dad, can we go to that? Yeah, of course you can. Organise the tickets. It cost, I don't know, thousands of pounds. Just did it. Didn't even think twice about it. Didn't even hesitate. A dream experience in the Bernabeu. So these are the types of things. Yes, I made the sacrifice.
These are the rewards.
But now this is the reward.
Yeah. That's right.
I think that goes back to anybody that says money doesn't bring you happiness. I quite frankly think it's bullshit, because the physical pound notes don't, but the experiences that you can bring to that, and especially the memories to your family, you can't do that without financial stability.
Yeah, exactly. Money makes the world go round. And that's very, very important. And I agree with you. Yeah. You know, you can't, without money, you've got no options.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, talking about that, I'm going to hijack this podcast, right?
Listen, it's all yours. You're centre stage. On you go.
We just spoke about having money gives you options. And one thing I get slated for, I say to people in my podcast is, I don't say to people, I say to myself, you must have savings in the bank. And I get slated for that. And it's quite old-fashioned, but I think if you've got savings in the bank, you've got options. Going back to this, then you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can buy a property when you want. You can go on a holiday when you want. You can buy, I always make a point of having, a significant cash reserve in the bank. And then I get slated for it, for saying, oh no, it's depreciating, inflation's eating it away. I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that what they're saying is true, but you'll also have the peace of mind that when you're going to bed at night, you've got that buffer.
Yeah.
If something was to go wrong,
Exactly.
you know, overnight or in the next week, then you've got that kind of safety net.
Yeah. The other thing I would say to that is, especially for young people, it's very easy to get seduced into the trend of the day. So remember, a few years ago was NFTs.
Yeah.
People are pumping money into NFTs, then crypto, and then all these Shibu coins and all these various coins. And the majority of those people have lost. And then Amazon FBA, you don't know a single person that's made significant money in Amazon FBA. You don't know anyone who's made significant money in crypto. You don't know anyone that's made significant money in NFTs. Yet, when you go on social media, everyone's living it up. But in the real world, we don't know a single person.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone's a guru. Everyone's selling a course. Everyone's got a subscription. But yet, nobody's actually seen it. Knows anybody with results on it.
Yeah. So, that's just a little bit of insight from me.
Yeah.
Having money in the bank and not being seduced with the trend of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get carried away with all of them.
Yeah.
There's
So
no
I'm
doubt.
right. I'm right in saying you don't have a pension.
I don't have a pension, correct? I think I've seen too many bad news stories to trust anyone with my money. Let me explain. In the dot-com boom, 1997 to 2000, I was an expert trader, like so many people. And even now, you've got all these day traders. They've got the algorithms. I was one of those guys. I was making loads of money, and then in the dot-com crash, lost it all. And I vowed from this day on, any penny that I've got, any money that I've got, I'm going to control. I'm not going to put it into anyone else's hand to control for me.
Right.
And then we've seen some high-profile pensions as well going bust. Imagine working your whole life, paying into a pension, and then the pension pot goes bust or it gets stolen. So I control all of my money, and I don't have anyone else controlling it at all.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I'm in the same position. I don't have a pension. The property is my pension.
Exactly.
That's my pension.
Yeah.
And for the reason of exactly what you hit the nail on the head, I'm in control of it. If I want to dispose of the asset, I've then got the cash.
Yeah.
Whereas I couldn't think of anything worse than tying all your money up into a pension that you've absolutely no control over.
Exactly.
And can't
they're
just take
making all the
100% of the funds out when you want, when it's your money.
Exactly. You've paid into it your whole life. So I've got a pension from my corporate days, and I asked if I could cash it out. No, I have to wait till I'm 55 so I can cash it out. So imagine putting your money in and then you can't access it when you need it. So I don't agree. So for that reason, I don't have a pension.
Yeah.
What words of wisdom would you give young people right now who are in school, don't know what they want to do, and are maybe struggling with their education? What kind of words of wisdom can you give them right now as to what their future might look like, or how they can make their future happen the way they want it to happen?
Interesting. I'm going to get slated for this. Have you ever looked up at the sky and thought, oh, look, there's a nimbus cumulus cloud? Have you ever done that? No one in the world has ever looked up at the cloud and goes, oh, there's a nimbus cumulus cloud, whatever it's called. And I remember really struggling in geography when I was at school. I just couldn't get my head around these clouds. They all looked the same to me.
Yeah.
In the real world, none of that even matters.
Yeah.
None of it matters. And I think, again, going back to the point, there is a lot of pressure on young people to determine what they want to do for the rest of their life. And see, if you mess up, it's all right. You're still young and you've still got many years ahead. I left school with no education, some O grades back in the day, with no education. And after 5 years, I managed to turn it around because I found the spark and I found the motivation for myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of these young people, society's telling them, their parents telling them, do this, do that. And that puts even more pressure on them.
Yeah.
So for me, what happened is I left school, no education. And then I was watching a television program once, and they're profiling these bankers down in London. And they're all earning £50,000 at the time. And £50,000 those many years ago was mega money. And I thought, I bet I'm actually smarter than all of those guys. And you know what? And the only difference is they're there and I'm here. Right, what do I need to do to get there and earn that money? That was the spark. And I thought, right, what do I need to do? I need to get an education, right? where can I go to get an education? Motherwell College. Back in those days, you know, it wasn't a great college. And I remember I went to see the head of admissions, Douglas Nichol, and I said, I want to do law. And he goes, well, Motherwell College isn't really the type of place where you come to get your higher grades to go to law at Glasgow Uni. We're not really set up for that. And he said, oh, there's a 99% chance it's not going to happen. And I said, so there is a 1% chance. And I took that 1% and I made it happen. I went to Motherwell College, got my grades, and I got into law school at Glasgow Uni. And that was me on the road. And I remember going into Motherwell College to do my hires. I was motivated. I was switched on, locked in, as young ones say. Whereas at school, I couldn't get my head around the clouds and I didn't have the motivation. It wasn't the intelligence, it was the motivation.
Yeah.
But when I was at college, I was hyper motivated. I wasn't interested in the chit chat.
Yeah.
I was like, the teacher would walk in and, how was your weekend? And I'm like, no, forget the weekend. You
Not
teach.
interested.
I'm here to learn. And then I got my grades and I went to uni, and then from there I got the corporate job.
I think that's a good, you know, if you're focusing on that 1% chance, that's what makes the difference, because most people would have focused on the 99% chance that it's not going to happen and discredited it, as opposed to absolutely, as you put it, locked on to the 1%. Locked in. Sorry.
You need to get your lingo right.
I'm not that young enough. I'm not that young, so locked in.
Yeah.
But you know, that's how you need to look. That's that entrepreneurial, you know, bit inside you.
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you something else relating to that. And I say this all the time: never take advice from someone you're not willing to trade places with. There's too many experts out there giving crap advice, and no disrespect to the head of admissions. I mean, he was probably giving me the good advice, but I was maybe hyper motivated to do it. But even now in society, everyone's got a bloody opinion, and when you start a business, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's telling you what to do. Everyone's criticizing you, and it's very easy to get derailed. And if you are starting a business, you need to be hyper focused and have a thick skin, because there's so many people out there telling you things, and it's enough to derail you.
Yeah. I think, what would you say to anybody who would, because if somebody's going to start a business or probably do anything in life, they're probably going to listen to their closest circle, probably their parents. But you'll mainly find they're the ones that will put you off, because they're trying to be maybe protective. They don't want to see you risk anything. They don't want to see you lose it all. So they kind of maybe aren't the most, you know, to push you on to do it, but you kind of need to discredit that. You know, it's like, I don't want to listen to my closest circle, but they're the ones that are going to have the biggest influence.
And have they got experience in what you're trying to achieve? If the answer is yes, listen to them. If the answer is no, then you don't listen to them. It's as simple as that.
That's true. Because they're and a lot of the parents will follow a traditional route, you know, like our parents, you know, which was, you know, pay off your mortgage, you know, stay in your work, just do your 9 to 5, have a pension, save, put your savings in the bank, all that kind of stuff. A lot of them will not think that creative way, so your children are following a similar path.
Exactly, but that, we must reiterate, that is from a position of love. If a parent is saying to a child, listen, maybe you shouldn't risk all of your life savings and go and run a business, 9 times out of 10 that's going to be from a position of love. And that was the case with my parents as well. They were like, are you sure you want to do this?
I'm maybe not the best one to give the parental advice then, because I think I would probably be the one saying to my kids, just risk it all, because I've lost it so many times. And when you lose it, you can rebuild it.
Exactly.
You know, but that comes back to, again, how much experience they have in different situations. If they've only known parents and they've only known school and the traditional way that the education's going just now, which hasn't changed since the, my God, Victorian
forever
ages, then they'll automatically feel a little bit stuck and frustrated. So that's, again, comes back to the fact that, why don't you let them go out and get little jobs? And it always comes back to the, you know, the minority of people that have, you know, taken advantage of that situation and maybe worked the children too hard and not paid them enough money and maybe been a little bit, you know, harsh on them. But, you know, is it really that bad? I mean, I've been trying to get my daughter into Scotland. But she'll turn 15 in March. And I'm saying, there's nothing stopping her at all going out there, being able to speak to customers, learning how to be helpful.
Yeah.
That interaction with different sets of people. She doesn't need to be serving alcohol. She can just fill the shelves. She doesn't need to be anywhere near the cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. Surely there's a way that you can adapt at that. And she wants to work, you know, and that's another thing. A lot of kids just now, they don't want to work. So it's trying to turn all that roundabout a bit and say, this is actually what you should be doing. Get out there.
Do you know why a lot of kids wouldn't want to work in the co-op?
Yeah.
Because it's no Instagrammable.
That's
It's no
true.
Instagrammable. It's no TikTok.
It's not
you
good
know,
enough.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you're entrepreneurial. You can turn anything into a TikTok.
Exactly, that's true. Social media, I would say, in my opinion, you buck the trend.
Right.
In the sense of you are very raw, honest, real.
Right.
Talk about the highs, the lows, everything in between, and you're not scared to do that. And you have a good following and continue to, you know, build a very good following.
Right.
Whereas the majority of people on social media don't seem to be doing that. They only seem to be selling. And yes, we need to sell ourselves, right? However, they just seem to be selling the... I watched one of your videos and you said in your phone, you have 30 millionaires and 1 billionaire. And not one of you has ever been on a private jet.
Exactly.
Whereas, I'm telling you now, the majority of people on my Instagram who have been on a private jet are not millionaires and they're not billionaires, and it's all for social media.
Exactly.
So, what do you think? Is it the raw footage? I don't know. What do you thought giving you the traction?
I think for me, it's very easy. I'm not selling anything, so I don't have any pressure to sell a book or a course or anything.
Yeah.
I think the way to win in social media is just be authentic and not try to dress it up for any audience. So I talk about the hardships of business. I talk about the difficulties. I talk about the stresses. I talk about the headaches. 80% of my content is negative. You want to run a business? Don't bloody do it. It's going to ruin you. It's going to be very, very difficult. You've no idea how difficult it is. And I think that is probably, maybe that comes across as a breath of fresh air when everyone's, you know, with
Selling the dream.
Rolexes and the Bugattis and the cars and the houses and all that. So the reality is very different. So I just focus on authentic content. And I think if anyone's listening to this, the way you're going to win in social media is just by being authentic to your craft. And I've seen vets with millions of views. I've seen car mechanics, you know, changing cylinders in cars, gaining millions of views. Don't underestimate how interesting your job is. It's actually much, much more interesting than you think. And I'll tell you now, the videos that we've crafted, created, filmed beautifully, nice lighting, edited really well, flop.
Yeah.
And then the ones where I'm just maybe doing something in the office, maybe writing something on a whiteboard and moving a post-it note along a couple of columns, that gets like tens of thousands of views or hundreds of thousands of views. So don't you be the judge. Put your rubbish content out there and let the audience decide if it's good or not. And I can guarantee you one thing, the stuff that you don't think is going to do well will probably do well.
Yeah.
Right.
I completely
Good
agree
advice.
because I think I said this to you recently. I had a video as well, and it's the one that's got the most amount of traction.
Yeah.
And it was a completely unscripted, just walking round a property refurb.
Yeah.
And I just put it up, and it was one of the ones that in my head I thought that's not really going to get a lot, and
Yeah.
it's the one that's absolutely
Yeah.
blew up. So
Yeah.
you're 100% correct. There's a lot of people who are too busy sitting thinking,
Overthinking it.
will I
Yeah.
post this? Will I not post it? Am I going to get judged? What's my friends going to think? Just post the blooming thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just post it.
Exactly. And no one really cares what you're wearing. No one really cares about your hair. No one cares. No one cares, you know, what you look like. It's just like, as long as the content just it's out there, it's quite interesting. It ticks a box.
Yeah. Good.
Boss Pizza.
Yep.
Where did the pizza idea come from?
Oh, yeah. So COVID, we had to close the restaurant and we thought, okay, the restaurant's closed. So what can we do to supplement the income? Let's start a little pizza business. Started pizza from the corner of the kitchen and it blew up. And then I thought, wait a minute. I'd look in that side of the kitchen and there's like a few guys making pizzas. And then I'd look in this side and there's like 40 guys making curries. And I thought, it's bringing in the same amount of income and it's like 10 times easier over here.
Yeah.
So then I decided from there, actually, wait a minute, we could actually open another branch and then franchise it. So that's where the idea was born for Boss Pizza. operationally, it's a very easy business. It's 1 out of 10. You put pizza in one side and it comes out the other side cooked. It doesn't get any easier than that from a sort of food creation point of view.
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you managing to scale so quickly? Because I seen one of your videos, you plan to open 1 shop per week.
Correct.
Now, that is a ballsy statement to make to the world on social media. You're absolutely held to account. How are you scaling so quickly?
Let me repeat that. For the avoidance of doubt, Boss Pizza will be opening 1 store per week in 2027. This year, we're going to open up maybe about 10. Next year, we're opening up 1 a month. 2027, we're going to open up 1 a week. And this is how we're going to do it. When I was outputting from the biggest kitchen in Britain, we were outputting 1 meal every 15 seconds, right? Not achieved anywhere else, right? Freshly cooked meal every 15 seconds. I'm all about the systems, the processes, economy of movement, shaving off all the sort of wastage time in absolutely every part of the business, and then just honing in on what matters. And that's going to allow us to open up 1 shop a week. So, for example, if you put in a franchise inquiry, you get the information sent to you within a matter of hours. You get a phone call, you manage to speak to an expert, all within 3 hours of putting in a franchise inquiry. You phone up any other company, you won't even get information for days. So it's all of these things, right?
Efficiencies.
And then, efficiencies. And then I've set up all of the parties. So my solicitor, I've told him, I need the franchise agreement turned around in 48 hours. Can you do it? He goes, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But normally when you speak to a solicitor, it takes like 1, 2, 3 weeks to sort something out.
Yeah.
So all of my suppliers, they've all been set up to deliver straight away. And even in the office, it's all about efficiency, systems, processes, making life easier and easier and easier.
Yep.
And it goes back to the boss. My job, if you're working for me, my job is to make your job as simple and as easy as possible.
Yep.
And most bosses don't think like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm trying to think of so many ways in how I can make your job easy, that you need to do the bare minimum, you're going to find it much easier to do what you're doing. And then you just replicate more of that one task. You take that one task and just replicate it over and over again.
How do you embed that culture when you're scaling so quick? Because I would imagine at some points in times there may be a difference in terms of the balance between new employees versus current recruits.
Yep.
How do you embed that culture at scale?
Easy. We've spent 3 years getting to this point, right? Every single email, if you're working for me, every single email that you ever need to send out is already drafted. Every single form, every single template, every single invoice is already templated in the drafts folder ready to go. So if I say to you, Alan, can you send out an invoice for Colchester, for example, he bought a franchise, it's going to take you like seconds to do it. So I don't care if you've got skill or no skill to work for me in my office. We've already got everything set up. You don't need to come in with vast amounts of experience and reinvent the wheel. All the work is already done.
I suppose that goes back to what you said about everything as simple as possible. Systems,
Processes, training, discipline, professionalism, all of the basic fundamentals. And I learnt that in London when I was working for Accenture.
Yeah. I think that's important to note as well, is that, again, going back to, there's a lot of young entrepreneurs who are making it very quickly by the means of social media, because you can get to that audience very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But what they don't then have is that corporate part installed in you.
Yeah.
Because you need that to implement systems, processes, etc. But without having that corporate part in you, how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really valuable to go and work for someone else. Anyone young listening to this, don't underestimate how powerful it is to work in an organization. That's where you learn HR, people management, you learn marketing, you learn systems, processes. Now, you may not learn it in your job, but you can see it in action. And that's when you go to run your own business, that's when you lean back on that type of information, and that's where it helps. One of the most fascinating things I ever learnt was culture and people. And I learnt that working in a call centre when I was at uni. It was a large banking call centre. And see, just me sitting at one edge of the call centre, I could see, right, the team members only hang around with the team members. They've got 8 team members per team. The team leaders hang around with the team leaders. The 8 managers hang around with 8 managers. The call center manager is sitting by himself, and he only ever has lunch at his desk by himself. When they go for lunch, there's no, the teams don't mix, the hierarchy doesn't mix with each other. I'm seeing all of this, and I'm taking all of it. That's me learning, learning this, the culture, the processes, the people, the behavior. And it was so valuable to me. And then when I was working in Accenture, and then even now in my own business, I look at that and I make sure I take the best bits of that, and the bits that were bad, I make sure I don't allow in my business. So for example, in our business, the whole team sit together. We all go out. I consider myself as the most junior member of the team. I work for the team. They don't work for me. Right. Whereas the narrative in a lot of big businesses is
it's the other way around.
The CEO walks in. I'm totally the different. I'm just down to earth.
Yeah.
I come in with my £20 watch and I'm just one of the guys. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
that's quite refreshing actually, because normally they're feared.
Yeah.
But it's because again, the culture in that environment, and then if they've not interacted, you don't know where you stand with them at all.
Yeah, exactly.
The property part, because you do seem to do quite a lot of business, and you talk a wee bit about property as well.
Yep.
Where did the property part come into it? Because you've had the corporate job.
Yep.
You're now in Boss Pizza. There's a property in the background. Where did the property part come in?
My first business was doing very well, and then I needed. The next door neighbour shop came up for sale, and thought, that's quite handy, yeah, I'll buy that. And then about a year later, the next door neighbour property came up for sale, bought that. And then about 5 years in, a really big property came up for sale with 60 car parking spaces. I thought, that's going to be really handy, I'll buy that. And then just by default, any property that came up for sale, business was doing really well. And what did I do with cash? For me, the only safe place to put it was in property. I wasn't going to put it in the stock market or pensions or anywhere else. So for me, the natural place to put extra cash was into property, and that's what I did. And then as a result of that, then the property portfolio just accumulated, and it just accumulated a lot over the years, slowly.
I think it's quite interesting, some of the posts that I've seen of yours when you're talking about property, because that is our world. And I see a lot of property education, and they're always hammering on about the importance of buying at discount and buying at discount.
What's that, below market value?
Yeah,
or something?
below market value, yeah, exactly. So
and they've even got below BLV. I do BLV, buy below market value. Okay, good on you, mate.
So listen, to the right people, a lot of these are good strategies, but the post I seen of yours I thought was very refreshing, is when you said you walked in, I believe it was a shop, and asked the guy how much he wanted it, and he says you'll pay him double to complete.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, especially in the property world, it gets hammered into a lot of people that you must be buying at discount or even at the current price. Whereas you're saying, well, hold on, if I'm paying a wee bit more over the time I anticipate to have that property, I'm still going to make money anyway on it.
Yeah.
But also goes back to, you need the cash in the bank.
Yeah,
to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's all linked. So you need to have savings in the bank. That gives you options. So that property, which I paid double for, I paid double for that property. It was the last property in a block of 10. And if I've got control of that property, it gives me control of the whole site. And then I can do whatever I want. I can do like a major redevelopment or whatever. So for me to pay an extra £40,000, it was only worth it. It was a tiny shop. It was about the size of this room, about 300 square feet. For me to pay double the price was well worth it, because looking back, that £40,000 is insignificant.
Yeah.
And my strategy for buying property is, if I like it, I say pay the full rate or pay even a bit more sometimes. And I bought my dream house in 2011, I think it was. Yeah, 2011, in December 2011. Whatever the price was, I paid, I went to a closing date, I paid significantly over the asking price, because that was my dream house and I wanted it. Yeah. And that extra, £30,000 or £40,000 that I overpaid 11 years ago is insignificant now, because I've got a beautiful dream house that I can't find anywhere else. A house that size, that close to the centre, is just amazing.
Yeah.
So always just pay if you really want something. I said, no, better just to pay for it.
Yeah, I would
And get
totally,
it.
I would totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there's people in property walking away from deals that are still deals
Yeah.
because they're looking for a short term fix, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a long term
quicker
game,
return.
as we all know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Property, I think where I've won in property is I play the long game. I'm not into property to buy and flip and sell quick and make a quick buck. I'm not. That's not my strategy. My strategy is to buy and hold and play the long game. That's where I win.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I can play the same, and I think if I was to flip somewhere,
Yeah.
I think in 20 years' time I'm absolutely going to regret it because I'll be looking back going, hold on, I made 40 grand, but I could have made 200 now.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And the amazing thing is you think, oh, you buy a property in your late 20s or early 30s and you think, oh yeah, I've got a 20-year mortgage. Time flies.
Yeah.
I've bought properties 10 years ago and bang, they're already paid off. Or I've bought like properties 20 years ago and before you know it, I'm 50 years old sitting here on the podcast and the properties are paid off. So time flies. So when you take on a 20-year commitment, you know, it's time flies.
It sounds long, but it's not really.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think you'll ever change your strategy on your properties, or are you stuck with that? You're like fixed on that as well, quite focused, and that's where you want to be.
I'm quite happy.
Yeah.
At this moment, I've got no reason to change.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to change anytime soon. But if I need to, I will. I've got quite an open and flexible mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just goes back to that, being able to pivot the strategy.
Yeah.
When, as you said there with the restaurant business, it was all going great.
Yeah.
By the sounds of things, Boss Pizza probably wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for COVID.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. And the thing is, Boss Pizza gave me a launch pad to go national and then maybe even international as well.
Mm.
Do you think you'll ever go back to opening up a restaurant again?
No. I enjoy the 9 to 5 now.
Yeah.
I'm home every evening with the kids.
Yeah.
I enjoy just working in my little corporate office in Hamilton. It's a humble little setup. I'm really happy with it now.
Brilliant.
I suppose that was back to you've got the right team, right cash in the bank to employ the right people.
Yeah.
Then you've took the pain from the 6-7 years in your corporate job, being away from your family to be able to do that. Where that's a bit. I know that people always say it. Somebody actually commented in one of my posts on social media and says, that's why it's called in the background, right? Now that's true, but by the same point, it is the bit nobody sees, but people need to actually see, especially if you're wanting to go into something.
Yeah,
you need to know what you're going into 100%.
Yeah.
Again, not just going back to what you're seeing the outcome on social media.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about passive income, because that's related to passive income. I've never met a single person who's made a success doing something in a passive manner. And see, if you're running a business, I'll tell you now, from experience, from many years' experience, if you're thinking of opening a business and having it as a second passive income, you're going to fail. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You have to be all in and fully committed if you want your business to succeed.
Yeah.
There is no other way that I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah. Everybody just wants the quick buck.
Yeah.
I think they think it's an easy option. I think they look at...
It's absolutely not the easy option. It's absolute hell on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, the things that you come up against are incredible, but I think some people go into it thinking it's a quick fix for them. This is going to happen overnight. It's going to be really simple.
And they're seduced by social media. They're seduced by the flash cars and the big houses and sitting in the bonnets of these Lambos. And
that probably aren't even those that are rented in somewhere in Dubai.
Exactly. And piles of cash on a podcast. Like how cheesy would that be? If I'm sitting
I know.
And you see people that are sitting with piles of cash on a podcast. Like if you've actually got it, you don't need to show it.
I know, you don't need to show it to anybody. You've got nothing to prove. It's the ones you're trying to prove something.
Exactly.
There's nothing to prove on there.
Exactly.
Going a wee bit back to the scaling of your business just now, how important is it that in terms of controlling your expenses?
Very important. You need to have an iron grip on expenses and on invoices that are due into your business. Boss Pizza is a pro forma business, and I would urge every business in the world to be a pro forma business. Now, what that means is, let's say, for example, I need to deliver you bottles of water. I'm not going to give you 30 days credit or 60 days credit. You're going to pay the invoice and then it gets delivered. Where a lot of businesses fail, they offer their customers credit 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then they often get stung. And that's where they lose out. And then you need to employ people to chase up those invoices. So Boss Pizza for me is very simple. We're a pro forma business. So for example, if you want to buy a franchise or if you want a delivery of something, you have to pay up front, and then you get the goods delivered. Zero headache, no stress, and everyone's in a good place. The last thing I want is, let's say for example, I've got a shop in London and they've not paid one of their suppliers. I would be affected by that. So
Yes.
I don't ever want the Boss Pizza to be associated with someone who's not paid a bill. So that's why I've set it up as a pro forma business. You pay, then you get the goods delivered.
Do you ever get any resistance against that?
No, because I've set it up like that.
Yeah.
But I know in the industry, like in the building trade, you know, these building merchants, they might give their tradesmen 30, 60 days credit, and then some of them go bust and then they end up losing. Whereas ours is a very low cost operating model. And the reason it's low cost is because I don't have people sitting in finance chasing invoices. I've set it up intentionally so it's low cost, which means higher profit for the franchisee.
Yeah. No, that's very, very interesting because we were talking to somebody recently and that is how their business did go under.
Yeah.
Because they rode a couple of $100,000
Yeah.
from somebody, their business went under and naturally just had a knock on chain.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Chain
Chain.
reaction.
Horrible.
In effect. And the thing is, that's the majority of businesses are operating like that.
Yeah.
On a promise.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very high risk. And I don't want to take those risks.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest risk that you have ever taken is?
Probably leaving my corporate job to run a business. And for the first 2-3 years, it was pretty hellish, actually. And I remember in year 4 or 5, my wife said to me, we were going through some really tough times. And my wife said, Ajmal, this was your dream. You know, your friends leave you, your colleagues leave you, your parents even sort of not leave you, but they
Question you.
Yeah, question you. And then you realise it's a very, very lonely place. And the only person that I had standing beside me was my wife. And even she said, Ajmal, this was your dream. And then I was alone for like another 1-2 years beyond that. Then we turned the business, you know, then we hit the big time and then it was great. But it's a very, very long and lonely and painful journey, is the journey of entrepreneurship.
What did you dive into during that time to get you over that spell?
You have no option. You've just got to soldier on.
You've just got to dig deep. Yeah.
You've got no option. You've put everything on the line, and you just work your way through success. And I saw that from my mum. My mother was, she'd never been to, my mother is amazing. She's never actually, she's not educated, right? And my dad used to tell me that. And I thought she's maybe not been to higher education or something. She hadn't even stepped foot inside a school ever.
Wow.
And then when she came to this country, no education, she couldn't speak the language, but she got me. Well, I'm the youngest. She got my sister. She became a scientist. My brother's a doctor. My sister's a doctor. And I've studied law. She just bulldozed the result over the line. She didn't have the education. She didn't even know how to spell education. Yet she still managed to bulldoze the result over the line. And that's what I learned just inherently in my life, in my house growing up. If you want something and the chips are down a bit and the odds are stacked against you, fucking just bulldoze your way to success. And that's what I did. You know, so year 4, 5, 6, just bulldoze the way over, just bulldoze the result over the line. And it's been great ever since.
It's incredible to hear how successful our children have been.
Yeah.
Given the fact she's not coming from an education background.
Yeah.
Do you think that's made her be that way? Was she quite strict with you guys with your schooling?
Very strict. You know, it was all about education because my parents had the foresight to see that we're not in a great position, but education is a way out. And my dad was great. He had great foresight. So he pushed my brother into, like almost forced my brother into medicine. And my brother became a doctor, and that's great. I mean, his life set up now, you know, he's 54 years old now. So yeah, I think it is phenomenal that sometimes when you've not got something, that hunger gives you the drive.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I think as well, when you're told from others as well that you can't do something, then that gives you the even bigger drive to do that.
Yeah.
That's right, to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And let me go back to what my child. Why am I entrepreneurial? Why do I want the good things? Why do I want the nice cars, the houses, the properties? Why do I want the good life? We were brought up with nothing. I kid you not when I say we were brought up with nothing. It was nothing. And see, that hunger gave me the drive. So, I mean, I can tell you, like in the 1970s, mum and 4 kids, me included, we used to sleep in one bed. And in the next door room, it was my dad and another 5 guys in Maryhill in Glasgow. So we were brought up in poverty. My dad was in minimum wage, right? Listen to this. I've never said this. My dad was in minimum wage. And imagine how hard it is living in minimum wage, divided by 3. 1/3 of the money would be sent back to Pakistan to support the family there. 1/3 would be spent on the 5-6 other family members living in the same flat, and then 1/3 would be spent on your family. And out of that, you've got to pay the mortgage, the bills, look after the kids. So we were brought up with nothing. And I remember when I was about 6 or 7 years old, we got Monopoly. That was such a big deal for us. That was huge. And then we've had older cousins as well, and they used to love coming to our house because we had Monopoly. It was grim. And just growing up, never had any branded gear. Always got teased at school for not having the Nike or the Adidas or all that type of stuff. Yeah. So see, when you're brought up with nothing, it gives you the drive and the hunger. Yeah,
it's amazing the amount of people that I've heard, and some of the guests that we've had have all had that exact same upbringing.
I know.
I think when it's made too easy for you, you sit back and wait for more things just coming your way. Yeah. Whereas in those positions, they've seen that they don't want that for their future, and it's given them the drive to go forward and excel.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think when you have nothing, you've also got nothing to lose.
Exactly.
That's right.
I mean, you know,
the only way is up.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, my life completely changed.
Yeah.
You know, and lost everything.
Right.
And that's where really, I can only talk from my journey, it really kick-started, because then when you've got nothing, you've absolutely nothing to lose. So you can just risk everything.
And I bet you didn't watch the clock. You didn't say, it's 5 o'clock, I need to stop working. Were you like that?
No,
exactly.
No.
You're right. When you've got nothing to lose. And then you don't even look at the clock. You just get the result. You just work your way to the result.
Keep going.
I think what you said there was actually hit me quite hard, actually, when you said about the journey of an entrepreneur is a very lonely place, because it is. And sometimes you just feel like not saying the world's homing in on you, but as you said, when you get to that point, which I think most people do, is there is a breaking point, and everybody starts to, you know, the novelty's wearing off now. You've started a business, but you're at that point a wee bit in, and generally, let's be honest, it's generally financial pressure that drives a lot of the problems, which you're at the point of you're trying to generate the income.
Yep.
You know, but you've also risked everything. You've probably taken a lot of investment, risked everything that you've got to get there, and suddenly everybody sees you in a pedestal. Yeah. But you're not quite at that point yet.
You're never at that point. You never arrive in business, and I'll tell you why. People say to me, Ajmal, you've got so much. When is enough going to be enough? And I don't think like that. I think I still need to keep going. I was in Birmingham listening to a talk from a billionaire. He'd like £3 billion worth of property. And he was like telling the audience that he's going to increase his portfolio to £6 billion worth of property. And I was thinking, when is that 3 billion not enough? When is enough going to be enough? And then I'll come to, now I'm micro level compared to that. When people say that to me, I'm like, it's never enough. There is no end. You just keep going and going and going. Yeah. I don't think anyone ever arrives and says, oh yeah, I've made it now, that's it, I can switch off. Yeah. There is no off button.
Yeah.
Is it because you still enjoy it though? Or is it because there's a fear in the back of your mind of a day might come that you'll lose it all? So you need to keep going. What makes you keep going?
I think entrepreneurs are quite unique. They've got that drive, and we can't just drive and then park up. I think you drive, and that drive keeps you going and going. And I think for me, it's you just have to keep going. And I love the journey. I love the game of entrepreneurship, and I love learning new things. I love the marketing. I love branding. I love building business. I love seeing the business results. I love seeing things come to life. So I think it's just inherent, but it's definitely inherent in me. I just love the journey.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, you go back to what you said. You look at, the world's, deemed as most successful, right? The super rich, the Musks, the Trumps, the Benzos, right?
Yeah.
These people are not stopping.
Yeah.
No.
They're not stopping. They're keeping going.
Yeah.
But yet there is an element of some people stop.
Yeah.
Does that not tell you something?
Yeah.
The fact that these guys are keeping going, does that not tell you it's not financially, it's not linked? Yes, you need cash in the bank, but it's not financially. What are you going to do? Make a couple of million quid and sit back and do nothing the rest of your life?
Yeah.
You need to have a purpose
every
every single day to get up and a drive.
Exactly. I'll tell you now, my work is harder than it's ever been, but I am more motivated and happier than I have ever been. I spring out of bed in the morning. I can't wait to get to work and have a great day at work, and see when I come home, that happiness is spilling over onto my wife. It's spilling over onto the kids. Then everyone's happy, all as a result of me working very hard and being happy in what I do. That has a massive positive impact on all of the other parts of my life.
That's what I said the last time. It has to be fun.
Yeah.
If you're in a situation or in a business and it's not fun anymore, then it's time to change things or move on or do something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to enjoy it.
Has there ever been a point where you've thought, regardless of any of the ventures that you've done, where you've thought, I don't think this is going to work. I think this ship may sink.
Not really, because I knew that if times get tough, I've got the ability to just graft. I've got the ability to work harder than anyone else. And I did that for the first 6 years. I worked from like 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 7 days a week. I would go home at 4 o'clock, rest for an hour, and then back to work at 5 o'clock and work to midnight. I was clocking in 2 working days every single day.
Yeah.
So when there are times where I think, was this going to work or am I going to fail? It didn't even bother me, because I thought I'll just work my way through it. Going back to what my mother was like, just bulldoze your way to success.
Yeah.
And so I just had that in me, that drive inside me.
I think that's a great ethos, the bulldoze your way to success. Because let's be honest, right? Nobody's got it figured out.
Yeah.
Nobody's got it figured out. We're all just
On that
bulldozing our way.
In fact, great point. Anyone under the age of 30 listening to this, see, when you're young, you look at older people and you think they've got it all figured out. They've got the house, they've got the cars, they've got the career, they've got it all figured out. But the reality is, everyone is in a state of mental turmoil, dealing with 1,001 things on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I think that applies to any age. I mean, I look at other people and go, I bet they've got it all figured out.
No one's got it figured out.
Nobody's got it figured out.
No.
Yeah.
Did you have any mentors as you were going through this journey that you're on to keep you on a track? Are you part of a mastermind that helps, that you get together with people and brainstorm stuff, or
not really? No. And I'll tell you why. I'm a business geek. I love business. I remember when I was 16, 17 year old, we used to read the business section of the Sunday Times. I only ever hone in on the business news, and within the business news, I hone in on the facts and figures and numbers. So I've just got that in me, that sort of business geekiness. So I love business, and I think that makes it a lot easier for me.
Right.
So let me explain it in another way, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a 16-year-old kid sitting in a bedroom. His brain is wired in such a way that he can hack into NASA or hack into the FBI, and he can do all these things. That's just the way his brain is wired.
Right.
Now, if I go to uni and get a degree in computer science or whatever it is, I could get 1,000 degrees and my brain will never be wired like that.
Right.
So from a business point of view, I just feel I can see things
a natural gift for the business.
I've got these
business
business
world.
goggles. I can just see, give me any piece of news, I can tell you who's making the money.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, we're paying £9 billion per month in interest only on our national debt. People say, oh, that's a national debt. Who's that debt going to? Who is taking that £9 billion and putting it in their pocket? Someone is earning the interest. That £9 billion that you and I are working for, someone is earning that interest. Who is that interest? So that's the way I look at things. Oh, we're giving military aid to Ukraine. We're not giving aid to Ukraine. We're making the rich richer and we're making the poor poorer. This is how we do it. When we give £5 billion of aid to Ukraine, we don't hand them £5 billion of cash. We take that £5 billion, we go to the weapons manufacturers back here, we buy £5 billion worth of bombs, send them off to Ukraine, and then the government is left holding the £5 billion bill. And who pays that? You and me,
us.
Through our taxation. So I've got these business goggles. I can see money and the route to money. And that's just the way I see things.
Yeah. You're not prepared to be brainwashed between what you're getting told. You can see the truth behind it.
Yeah.
So the W in war should be replaced with W for wealth transfer. Whenever there's a war, money is being transferred from the poor to the rich via arms sales to the countries, and then the people of that country end up picking up the bill through their taxation.
And you're spot on, because you think to yourself, if you were looking at it on face value, you know, look where we're at. You think the world's evolved and we're still at war.
Yeah.
We're
Still at war.
We've not learned any lessons.
Fighting with people.
All right, I'm a business guru, right? Not a business geek, right? I love a business. If you want to make serious money, right? Not very ethical, right? If you want to make serious money, get involved in weapons manufacturing. Go into that industry. That is where the trillions are made.
Yes.
We're dealing with chump change, talking about property and food and takeaways and restaurants and normal businesses. The serious money is in weapons manufacturing. It's billions upon billions.
Yeah. But nobody seems to blink an eye. See, when you hear that in the media, that this is expenditure, nobody seems to blink an eye.
Exactly. We're brainwashed. We're brainwashed. And the great thing about being in the weapons manufacturing business, it's all shrouded by secrecy.
Yeah.
So the companies aren't revealing how much money their directors and shareholders are in. It's all there's so much secrecy around it.
Yeah,
that's a good business to get into.
Yeah,
maybe we should do that.
If it goes wrong in the property, then maybe that's where we should look into.
And I put a previous video. I said they spent £6 trillion in the war on terror, right? And the way I see it through my business goggles is, who made the £6 trillion? Someone has actually, if the US government spent £6 trillion, someone has made it.
Yeah.
And the people that make that level of money, it's all shrouded in secrecy. So it's fascinating.
Where do you see business as a general for this year? In terms of everything that's going on in the world, political, with trade wars, where do you see business in terms of? And I'm telling you from my own experience, up until last year, then my main business is in the property and the holiday home sector. Up until last year, it's always thrived. Everything's been booked way advanced, 12 months plus in advance. But I'm seeing there's a lot of people who are very, very hesitant. They're hesitant to spend their money. They're keeping a wee bit of cash. Now, we are still getting those bookings, but they're very, very much last minute. Come last minute means you get slightly depleted margin. So you could use that theory across a lot of businesses. But do you think there's people who are a wee bit more hesitant to spend money just now with a lot of political aspects going on in the world?
I think it's just the cost of living has just gone through the roof. The government has actually collected, from 10 years ago, they're now collecting double the taxation. Yet our services, the NHS, the doctor's appointment, which is a bloody pain point for me.
Yeah, I agree.
The amount of tax that everything's gone up, but the services have seemed to be in decline. And I don't mind paying double the tax if we're getting double the benefit. But we're paying double the tax and half the benefit.
Yeah.
So it's not really working. And I think we need to look at the whole taxation system. We're taxed for absolutely everything.
I think the sad thing about it is that the government don't think that we've noticed yet.
Yeah.
Because they treat us all like idiots.
Yeah.
They'll not even know. So
Yeah.
just keep going, keep pushing,
Yeah.
keep pushing. But people are literally on their knees
Yeah.
right now trying to make ends meet.
And we're indebted. We're almost slaves to the taxation system.
Absolutely.
We get taxed, and people don't know this. We get taxed for walking. Did you know that? You get taxed on your VAT on your shoes. For every step you take, you have to pay tax to the government. Every breath you take, you have to pay tax to the government. There's climate change levy, which is a levy applied on businesses. So even the air that we breathe, we have to pay tax for. At what point is someone going to say, well, wait a minute, this is getting a bit ridiculous now?
I think at this point.
It's absolutely not. And then even for dying, you have to pay your kids have to pay the inheritance.
I know.
Tax for absolutely everything. It's just got out of hand now.
I know. 100% of your money just goes right back to the government.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Britain's the worst.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is.
I mean,
Incredibly.
it's no surprise that there is, you know, the amount of millionaires, the amount of wealth that are exiting the country,
Yeah.
can only have a detrimental
Effect
to everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, remaining.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we need an overhaul, and I think a lot of people are thinking reform are going to come in and save the day. I think this whole issue is much bigger than even reform.
Yeah.
So reform are at the moment they're blaming the migrants. I'm actually hoping that Nigel Farage gets into government, because very quickly, within 1-2 years, everyone's going to realise it was never about the immigrants.
No.
They're going to realise that. But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, we could probably do a full podcast on that subject alone.
A full podcast. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time the next couple of years, politics. There's a lot of people struggling, and the finger of blame is being pointed in all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
I think we need to look at probably the taxation system
Yeah.
and how much
For
of
sure.
your money is actually being taxed, and then you're buying things that's getting taxed, then you have to pay tax on that, and then the people you're buying it from have to pay tax on that again, and then it's just this downward spiral of tax. It's going to bring us to our knees if it's not already done so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really watch the news that much. However, on the rare occasion I do, every time I turn the television on, you've got Keir Starmer saying we're going to give 50 million contribution towards this, 100 million contribution towards this. I'm guarantee I'll turn the telly on tonight and we're going to give a contribution to fix this service, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to be they think money is the fix to all problems.
Yeah.
When it's not, it goes back to that the head of the public sector head versus the private sector head. You know, if there was an issue in a business, right? If you had an issue in your business, right, that was financially linked, you would bring a guy in, right, and see if you had £1 million leak in your business, you would happily pay that guy 300 grand because he's going to save you the other seven. Where it's like they don't do that in the public sector.
Yeah.
They shut things down and move things about, and it ultimately has a detrimental effect instead of actually investing in the key areas.
Yeah.
That's where they don't do it.
Yeah, there's not, you know, in the private sector, nobody has an unlimited bank balance, regardless of how much is in there. Even if it's serious wealth, it's still limited to what is in there. But you're going in the public sector, as if we've got an unlimited bank balance because then we'll just tax them even more.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep that money going about. But I think until you have somebody with the private sector head on,
exactly,
that's not going to change.
Yeah.
But again, you could go down a rabbit hole with the conversation, because let's be honest, why would you want to take a job with a politician, right? What's 70 grand going to do you?
Yeah.
Right? To take a key role like that one, that's not a lot of money for the responsibility. Why would you want to do that? Right? You know, when you could dedicate that same amount of time and make that tenfold to yourself.
Yeah.
But again, you could go down a rabbit hole with that conversation.
I know the whole Nigel Farage thing, though, and it's all linked to. I think the biggest escape from jail was probably COVID came just after Brexit. I mean, Brexit was devastating for my business and for many businesses. And I think what saved the Brexit narrative was the fact that COVID hit right around about the same time, and that masked a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
So a lot of the problems that we're seeing today is as a result of Brexit. And even for my business, something like to bring in some machinery from Italy would cost like 80, 90 pound or something, for example. And then after Brexit, it's gone up to like £600. And for a lot of small businesses, that's a big price to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has a knock-on effect on all prices for consumers.
Yeah, of course.
You do share your political views
Yep.
on social media, which I wouldn't say is it's not risky at all, because that's what the whole platform of social media is for. But it doesn't seem to have a detrimental effect to you. You know, whereas some people can be quite selective in what they consume, whereas that actually seems to thrive. You know, gain traction with you.
I think the things I speak about are, I'm not out there with an agenda. I'm just relating it back to how it affects my business.
Yeah.
So I'm giving my opinion with an example, and I think that really helps. And we were brought up and told never talk about religion or politics. Why not? That's why we're unable to have a debate.
Yeah.
So that's why we go to these marches of people going, they're clashing. What happened to the good old art of conversation where, okay, do you believe X? I believe Y. Why don't we talk about it? We've lost that narrative because we were just brought up for years, never talk about religion or politics. Bad move. I think you must talk about religion and you must talk about politics, because only then can your debates and your discussions get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the art of conversation and communication has depleted over the years, and it's fundamental as to how everything works, from your family to your friends to your business, and on and on.
You're right. I think we should be able to just have a dialogue, even a sharp discussion with someone with opposing viewpoints without falling out. I'd love to have a discussion with you about something we're totally opposed on a topic that we're totally opposed on, and then still at the end of the discussion we shake hands and get on with our life.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think part of that
How
issue,
refreshing would that be?
I know, let's do that. Let's do that
Sorry,
then
Alan.
to prove the point.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a part of that Glaswegian thing in there, because Glaswegians get their backs up.
Yeah.
You know, want to fight about things, etc. You know, but whereas I'm in the same opinion as you. Is, see, if I have the opposite opinion of you, then that's completely fine. But I still respect that that's your opinion.
Yeah.
So I may not agree with you, but I respect that that's your opinion, and it sounds like you're on the same wave. Whereas I think there's that kind of Glaswegian thing, like, so, or because I don't agree with you, I need to fall out. You know, you don't. We can still all be pals and have completely conflicting views here. If you take that right back to business, see, if you can't handle having conflicting opinions, you probably won't do well in business, because you'll probably be falling out with people
Exactly.
All the time.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you want to cover?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot.
I was going to say, I think we have covered quite a bit. As I said, I think for me, if you were up for doing another one in the future, I'd be up for it. I think just now is good to get like a high level overview of your interests. You know, and then we can go back into some other point. You know, one home subject, but probably wouldn't be the right way to do it the opposite way about.
Yeah.
You know, anything else you want to cover on?
No, I think we've done well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's been great.
Listen, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it. We've covered quite a lot of subjects.
Yeah.
We'll get you back on and we'll home in a couple of different subjects.
We'll talk about immigration. We'll talk about Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Brexit. We'll talk about taxation.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the country being on its knees. We'll talk about how people are just being squeezed to the point of death, literally, with the amount of tax that they pay.
Really are.
And we're not talking enough about it. So let's have another podcast about this. That'll be amazing.
And we'll break the internet with it as well.